Hello and welcome to the Foxcatcher Preview Show. My name's Julian Vallis, joined up in Sydney, or it could actually be some type of jungle, Nick Ashman. Now, you were telling me actually earlier in the week that you've just become so strong that you don't get sick anymore. No matter what happens in your household, people get sick, the dog gets sick, but you just rise above it. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you've risen above the joke, you fuckwit. I was beating the chest here on Monday. The whole family's been sick, and I'm sitting there going, how good am I going? You know, I've got my health under control. I'm in my mid-40s, but I'm just nailing life. And then I started feeling a bit of a scratch on the throat on Monday afternoon. Wife said to me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine." And then last night just woke up and was no good. So
Yeah.
the good news is I get to start a sex hotline and
Correct.
make a bit of coin on the side because in case the tips don't go good this weekend.
Yep.
So 1-800, call me now.
Yeah, no, that'll definitely that'll light up the Barry White sort of situation.
Right.
Let's get into the track intel, mate. So something
Yeah.
that we know you're absolutely airborne with. We're going to go back to Randwick, true position the entire circuit this week. What kind of track are we going to play on? Because I see at the moment they've got it as a soft 7, but there could be drying conditions in Sydney. And how do you think it's going to play?
Yeah, for once we've got blue skies here in Sydney and the sun's well and truly out. So we think this track will dry out. Now, it's had a lot of rain. It's had a bit of wear and tear over the last month or two as well. So it may not dry quite as well, and we've got to remain a little bit nimble. Sometimes when we get a lot of rain at Randwick, Jules, and then we get the sun, it can get a little bit laney, and it's often hard to predict where and when those lanes are going to pop up. But at this point, we've been told that lanes 4 and beyond is exactly where you want to be. The first 2 or 3 lanes are a little bit inferior. As that dries out, I think when we get the message that it's off rail lanes 4 and beyond, if you look at the stats, the majority of the winners are sort of lanes sort of 8, 9 and out to sort of 14, 15. It's sort of like that. It's just you can still win inside lane 8, but it's a little bit tougher. I think as this track dries out towards Saturday, what you'll probably see, I've seen this before, is lanes 5 to 10. That's probably going to be your absolute sweet spot. But if you can't get into those sort of 5 or 6 lanes, then really anything outside lane 4 is going to be okay.
Beautiful. That's the intel for Randwick this week. Victoria, we go to Flemington, out 8 metres the entire circuit. I think we're going to be on the soft range. We're already in the soft range right now. Look, there's not much rain about today, but I think there's rain sort of Friday and then race day. Flemington really impacted when the rain does hit on race day. So I think we stay in that soft range. Interesting to note, sort of 20 to 25 kilometre northwesterly. If that pushes into that westerly range, we know that that's actually a headwind into the straight. So then as I go to my next part, in terms of the intel for how the straight's going to play with Flemington, I think you probably want some cover, but outside lanes are going to be the advantage with this setup on Saturday. Circle, I want to be forward of midfield. I think that's going to be probably a little bit of an advantage. I just want to also preface here, usually Flemington, it falls off the cliff with leaders, usually. I think with this setup right now, leaders actually comes right back into it. Now, just be mindful that northwesterly probably doesn't theoretically advantage leaders because they're going to be hitting that wind around the circle. But I think leaders plus a little bit at Flemington on Saturday, which is usually, we don't say it too often, but this setup, the numbers suggest that might be how we're playing at Flemington. Eagle Farm, out 2 metres the entire circuit, Nico. Again, probably a little bit of a similar setup to Sydney in that they could probably push trying to get to close to a good, whether they get there or not, sort of soft range at the moment, but it might sort of sit in that sort of 4.5, 5 range probably. How do we think it's going to play?
Yeah, good to soft is what we've sort of forecast. So because we had the meeting there last Saturday and it was a heavy 10 and it got abandoned, there's going to be a little bit of kickback, a little bit of they would have got into the track. So this is what's really tricky. A lot of people, we had the rescheduled Group 1 races, the Kingsford Smith Cup and the Queensland Derby, and we've also got the Oaks. We're going to touch on those 3 in a moment's time. What the main thing that people need to understand is a week ago we were told it was an off-rail day, lanes 5 and beyond. And certainly until it got abandoned or postponed, that's exactly how the track raced. This is a bit different this week. We're told that sort of probably on-speed midfield is where you want to be. Lanes 3 to 8 is where the advantage is in the straight. You can come wider than lane 8. The ground out there is just as good as lanes 3 to 8, but you've got to get out there.
Yeah,
There's
that's
no
right.
advantage to being out there. unlike last week. So we call this through the middle. And when I get through the middle reports given to me for Eagle Farm, I typically say, you don't want to lead, you don't want to be outside lead, you want to be 3rd to 7th.
Yep.
That's the ideal spot at Eagle Farm on Saturday. So when we're going to touch on the Group 1s in a moment's time, if your horse doesn't have a lot of gate speed, you probably want a soft barrier draw so you can be maybe 3rd to 7th without having to do too much work.
Beautiful. So we also got a new term for the Foxcatcher punters out there, through the middle. So make sure we write that one down in our notepads. That's the track analysis for the 3 tracks this week, punters. All right, Group 1 set this week. As Nico mentioned, we've got the 3 of them, 2 sort of overcarrying from last week, which were the Kingsford Smith Cup and the Queensland Derby, and then we've obviously got the Queensland Oaks as well. We'll just go racebook order here, mate. So we'll start with the Kingsford Smith Cup. Look, we spoke about this last week, so it's probably a similar setup. Maybe when we're talking about Jolly Star is that she's going to get the drying track, and that's probably going to be a little bit more in favour of her. If you look at what happened with the market last week, she was sort of getting in the bin. Now, I think that's probably due to the fact that soft track was getting worse and worse, and you could probably – it looked like she was probably going to touch close to $4 on Saturday. I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, Private Eye not running, going probably into the Stradbroke, there's a little bit of a different sort of setup with the market a little bit. But I still think that she's probably clearly the horse to beat. Do I want to take $2.60? Probably not. And I think the other chance is Giga Kick. So there's no real advantage angle for me in this race. What do you want to talk about the Kingsford Smith Cup here, mate?
Yeah, I think the drying conditions work for Jolly Star, but I think the predicted track pattern here doesn't.
Yep.
Last week she had an off-rail day. What she wanted was maybe nothing worse than a soft 5, 6, and a run on track. That would have suited her from the wide gate. It means J-Mac could have just taken his time out of the barriers. All he had to do was find a bum. It didn't matter if she was 3 wide with cover. That probably would have been the ideal situation. This week it's a little bit different. We've got through the middle, lanes 3 to 8. So covering ground around the turns is slightly bigger disadvantage now. The other query is whose back does he follow into the race?
Yeah.
I think if the track pattern emerges the way we are predicting it will, I think Mork Zora on Giga Kick will probably chance the arm and go forward definitely this week rather than go back and try and grab Jolly Star's back. Now, if he does that, what does J-Mac want to do? I think the tactics between these two elite jockeys, Zara and McDonald, through the first 300 metres of this race before they start turning, I think that's going to be a real watch at Eagle Farm on Saturday. I can't really bet in the race. I do think the likes of Rothfire, Zarastro and Rise at Dawn and maybe even Komochi, if she's still with us, keep an eye on the market flux there.
Yep.
I think these 4 horses, so that quartet, are now a little bit more advantaged by this race being run this week. Drier track, more on speed, sort of horses dominating. And I think it gives them their chance. And certainly Rise at Dawn, we're looking at him. He could be the one that comes out and goes to a Stradbroke handicap. I thought he was great in the Doncaster, Jules, and I thought they were a little bit negative on the ride.
Yeah.
I thought this is a horse that you really need to drive along and ride a bit ugly. And I think on Saturday, like from barrier 1, I'd love to see him sort of hunt up and give Rothfire a bit of curry early doors and make the pace right on and then get that drop in behind a good, genuine tempo. And then a horse like Jolly Star, who's going to be neutral looking for a bum out of the gate, she might end up 7, 8, 9 lengths off them at the 600-metre mark. And all of a sudden, you've got yourself into a position where you've got a chance at knocking over this mare.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to look at it because I've got no doubt Rise at Dawn's best asset is the ability to be able to absorb high pressure. Doesn't have an 11.2 at 11.3 in it that we know that Jolly Star has. Well, Jolly Star's probably got an 11 flat, to be honest. But if you take the guts out of her and have that piece of string her further back than what they want to be, then that's your obviously your opportunity to beat horses like that, especially if you Rise at Dawn. And I 100% agree with you. I think they'd love to take back what happened in the Doncaster. They just went too moderate for a horse like that to be able to produce, I think, its best tactical advantage, which is being able to absorb high pressure. That's the Kingsford Smith Cup. Let's get to the Queensland Oaks. This is the race that obviously was always going to be on this race meeting, so we haven't touched at all on this at all. Filly a favourite. So this is the horse that's sort of been able to go through the grades, and then we've got these other horses like Benagil, who we know wins the South Australian Oaks, then fails last start and probably got excuses for that, gets to Eagle Farm, bigger track. That's obviously going to be an advantage. I think a horse like Moving Out with a massive jockey plus. I think James McDonald going into the saddle, that's no disrespect to Craig Newitt, but James McDonald is James McDonald. I think he's probably got the possibility to make this horse go, as we say, get it to go. So there's a bit in this race. What are you looking for this race?
Yeah, look, I mean, just a couple of little stats first of all on it. So favourites have got a pretty good record in this race, Jules. They've won 5 of the last 9 editions, and if you had $100 on every favourite since Eskimo Queen in 2007, you'd be up more than $1,000. So that bodes well for Philia. But what doesn't is the fact that only 3 fillies from the last 25 attempts have been able to do the Roses Oaks double. So that's something to consider as well. Barriers, here's an interesting one for you. 7 of the last 9 winners have jumped from barriers 9 to 18. So maybe those inside gates don't matter too much in these staying races. And 6 of the last 9 winners have been placed 12th to 16th at the 800-metre mark. So in recent history, this has been a race where you can run on from the tail of the field. So I think it's a moderate tempo with Shangri-La from the Waterhouse and Bott stable. By the way, they are airborne. I know we keep speaking about it. Still striking at 25% from the last 100. ROI plus 27%. Chris and Corey Muntz also going really well. So, I'm with Benadryl. I just think you cannot give her 1 ounce of conviction for what happened in the Roses. I mean, she had no hope. She was miles back. She got chopped out, and she basically just went to the line as if she'd had a bit of a trot and canter. She was 4 weeks between runs. The figure she produced in the SA Oaks, Jules, is better than the Doomben Roses number. So I know she's got it in her, and I don't have to go back very far to find that number. So I think from a better barrier this week, you'll see her in the first 6 or 7. I think Zara will ride her according to the track. You'll have faith that she can see out the 2,200 metres, which remains, I guess, a small query because she does have quite a sharp turn of foot. But when I looked at her going out onto the track, onto the Roses, she looked to have a bit of presence against those 3-year-old fillies that she was racing against, and they smashed her in betting. She was heavily backed in the Roses. She didn't get the cash, but I think you take the SP, you take the number from the SA Oaks, you take the better barrier, you take the world-class jockey, and I think you got yourself a bet at $5.50.
Compelling commentary around the horse Benadryl, and I think we speak about it a lot, that these horses can't continually go to the well. So there's no doubt after winning the Group 1 SA Oaks, they would have backed off this horse, as you mentioned, 4 weeks in between runs. They didn't need to win the Roses. So you're going to ride at negative neutral from the gate to begin with as a starting point, which I'm pretty sure you said as we're leading into this race when we previewed the Roses. You spoke about that. So that's for the punters to work out. Yes, absolutely to the eye, and you can just look at the race book and say, yeah, that horse was below market expectation and disappointing. You could possibly then draw the line that maybe it's fallen off the cliff and done for the prep. But you just got to understand that clearly was set for the SA Oaks, then they back off, and then they go again, and it's just whether it can repeat that figure that it did in the SA Oaks. But no doubt you would expect it to be a much better performance and ridden to win the race probably more than what it was in the Roses. That's the Queensland Oaks. Let's get to the Queensland Derby. We spoke about this last week, but we'll touch on it again. This is a race when I sort of opened it up with you last week saying, I've just got no idea. I find this race really, really tricky. There's just no real big number that I want to stamp with any of these horses. My opinion doesn't change as we go on. I mean, maybe do I still want to have something small on the Muffin Man at a big price, but now it's, a long time between runs for a 2,400-metre race. Not ideal. Just not a great setup. What are we doing in the Derby, mate?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? And I think what you just said at the end there is the key here. It's another week in between runs. So horses coming from the SA Derby like Statuario are now 5 weeks between runs. We just spoke about Benadryl being 4 weeks between runs and how that meant they're going to be negative neutral from the wide gate. Now, this is the grand final. Horses like Statuario, I wouldn't have thought are going to have another run after Saturday. So they will ride as aggressive as possible, but 5 weeks between runs is not ideal. So, but that said, there's a few in there. I just think Statuario ticks all the boxes, Jules. I'm not jumping out of trees to back him at $5.50 or $6, although I do think that's a reasonable price for him. I don't think he's unders or anything like that, but he's got good form at 2,400 metres and beyond. He won the Galilee Series final. He beat 2 horses that have come out and won against since him, Politely Done and Litsteel. He goes across. I think if you swap the run with Feminale, he probably wins the SA Derby. And then you're probably taking $3.54 about him if he had won that Derby. The Derby rated okay without it being anything fantastic. Yep. That's the problem. He comes up there. Yes, he ticks all the boxes except the number that he's put down. It's just not enough to make you go, oh, God, that thing's immoral. So in terms of the roughies, we touched on it. Like the Muffin Man and Rogan come out of a fast 2,000-metre race. Maybe the 5 weeks between runs won't be as big an issue for them because they had a really solid grounding there. And then the other one is Party Crash. I keep looking at this guy. You know, he's came through that benchmark 66 race down at Morpheville on the Parks track. Now, the Parks, 2,250-metre race at the Parks track is hardly an inspiring form line for a horse going to a Group 1 2,400-metre race, but the margins were good. We speak about this on our review show. Time and margins are what you're looking for in those weaker races, and the time was good. The margins were good. There was only one horse that got within 4 lengths of him in that race. The late splits were good. He carried 58 kilos. Most of the horses in the race had less than that. So I think there's a bit to like about Party Crash. He hasn't finished out of the Quinella in 5 starts. Craig Williams in the saddle. Craig's probably not quite, in terms of strike rate and profitability, going as well as he can. But barrier 1, he won't do any work in the run. And now that we know that sort of you don't have to be too far away from the inside fence, I think he's right in calculations.
All right, beautiful. So that is the Group 1 set with the Derby, the Oaks, and obviously the Kingsford Smith Cup from Eagle Farm this week. All right, Nico, let's get into your New South Wales set. And if we can land, well, to be honest, we only need to land one of these by looking at this sheet. And you'll be able to cure your whatever ailment you've got because you'll be able to just pump yourself through with cash like Magic Johnson did to get rid of what he had. So let's go with your New South Wales set.
Yeah, let's. I'm just going to leave all that alone. Race 6, number 9, Captain Amelia. Speaking of John O'Shea, this is my best roughie all day.
Yep.
She ran the fastest last 200 metres of the day first up at Randwick. And then she went to Hawkesbury on that bottomless track, the heavy, and she just didn't handle it, which she's shown before she doesn't handle it. She's going to get the drying conditions on Saturday. She's going to get a run on track on Saturday. And the last time she went to Randwick 1,400 metres in a benchmark 88, she won. So I feel like it could be a little bit of history repeating for her. Stable's going pretty good as well, and you're getting $20 to find out. Race 7, number 5, this is a horse that I've been following for a while, Fearson. Now, what's been really annoying is that they've taken this horse or allowed him to sort of flop out of the barriers at his last couple of runs on days where I thought he would be well served punching up on top of the speed like he has done in previous preps. I'm hoping that they don't try and cross and lead on Saturday because I don't think the fence will be the place to be, but it is a race devoid of pace. If they can just let him amble through the first 400 metres, then he's got a last sort of 1,000 in him that's better than this field. And you're getting around, $19 to find out. He's a decent horse. He hasn't been suited at his last 2 runs with the track pattern and where he's been positioned. Saturday, he gets his chance to overcome it. He gets a run on track if they do happen to be slow out of the barriers. If they're not slow out of the barriers, he'll be on top of the speed. That's because there's no pace in the race. Either way, he's a horse worth following. And then finally in the last race, number 12, Mabel. Placed in the Quinella, 7 of 10 first up runs. Some really good efforts over 1,000 metres at Randwick previously. 1,000 metres is this horse's go, and it loves being fresh, loves a dry track. I think when they put up, we might have put up $34, $41. I thought to myself, well, that's a bit silly because I think they're based on the current track condition. And if you look at this horse's dry track, 1,000-metre form, and at Randwick, it looks bloody good for this, Jules. So it goes into the bet slip as well.
Beautiful. Okay, so that's a really tasty New South Wales set from Nick Ashby. My Victorian set, Flemington, really tricky day. Now, we talk about, when's the best time to, so I'll just quickly go through a bit of preamble, just when we think the best time usually of the year is to bet. And I always talk about summer because it's dry tracks, horse population at its lowest. You've got so many race meetings due to Christmas and everyone wants to have their meetings on. So diluted field products. Well, now we get to this time of the year in winter and we have this issue where you're going from good tracks to wet tracks and then back to good tracks. So there's no real consistency in track conditions. So horses' form can fluctuate. The horse population in Victoria is at its highest, meaning it's at the peak in terms of the most horses in. You don't have the Thursday night Pakenham. You don't have the Friday night Cranbourne. So all of a sudden you get a lot more bigger fields, more competitive racing. It's the hardest time. So I found this a really tricky meeting. In saying that, I'm going to start with race 3, number 10, Dream All Day. It's first up off 140 days. Not ideal probably on a wet track. 1,400 metres I like for this horse. You can go back through previous history of this horse. Lightly raced. It was off 145 days when it broke its maiden at Ballarat and it went through the roof. And from there, I was like, okay, you can really become a great horse. Didn't work out next start. Then it went to Flemington. Shin went forward, led, it won. And then it ran third, I think, in its last start. So it didn't have a really arduous prep last campaign either, which I like. It only had the 4 runs, 2 sort of jump outs, trials. Whether you get any guide from that, not saying too much, but I'm going back through previous history of this horse that it can perform. First up, I think 53 kilos with the claim. Don't know where it gets to from the gate. That's going to be the interesting thing from the tactics point of view. But if it can tag a backside, I just think it's the best horse in the race. Now, it does do plenty of things wrong, so I'm hoping they might have knocked that out of it. And maybe it's a senior jockey horse. Best efforts have been with the senior jockey on. So there's a little bit of buyer beware there as well. But I think it's the best horse in the race, and I want to take the price because I think it'll progress more than anything else in this race. Dream all day. Then sort of the other spectrum, I've got a horse that's really progressive, and now I'm taking a horse that I think clearly it's done its best before and might not get back to its figures ever again. But race 7, number 1, nonconformist. First up off sort of just a bit tick under 190 days last start, it went to Adelaide, and I think it was really well supported in the market, and they thought this is probably its right race. It wasn't outstanding. It was plain. It wasn't terrible, though. I know the winner came from behind it, but I thought it was okay. Second up here now, 1,600 metres. I just think it might be better than him, to be honest. Or it might be 2,000 metres. But either way, I think it's could just be better than him. And then we go, wow, that's the nonconformist we know. It's got old figures. We know that. I just think it's going to be right in this race. It's against one of our horses that we like in terms of Liberami, who's down in the weights again, but it's sort of been really well founded around $2.50. So I'm happy to back nonconformist each way, that if it can get anywhere near its best, it will be winning this race. So a really tricky day, which I said, 2 horses I'm backing each way. Righto, snaps or don't snaps. I'll kick us off here, Nico. So we're just sort of giving our guide to the punters of whether they should take the price now or just hold off. You'll get a better price closer to the jump for these horses. Race 1 at Flemington. Staying race. It's a small field. There's only 7 horses in it. There's a horse called Golden State Warrior. I sort of put up $2.90. It's back out to sort of $3.30 now. I've marked it much bigger than that. I just think you're going to get better price than that. It might end up winning the race, but I think there's a bit of depth to this race, and I think the market will gravitate towards other horses in the race. So if you like Golden State Warrior, I'd be holding off. And in race 9, a horse called Pivot City, which a big talking horse in terms of a lot of people like it because it's got that ability to run on from really impossible positions. But it's drawn gate 2, and we've spoken about this in terms of the track intel up the straight. I think the outside gates will be an advantage. It's sort of 310, 320 right now. I think it's a don't snap. Look, as I said, it's got the ability to win this race. I'm not saying don't back it. I just think you're going to get a better price about Pivot City closer to the jump. You've got one for us at Randwick. I know you put in 2, but we're going to keep that other one because that's our pin the tail horse, and you can talk about that there. Yeah. Randwick, mate.
Yeah, look, it's race 9, number 2, Wind Chat. Now, he's a handy horse. He's a go-forward sort of horse that makes his own luck on speed. I thought second up last prep, he won over 1,300 metres at Randwick, but the rail was out 4 metres, and it was certainly advantageous to be up on top of the speed. He was heavily backed in that benchmark 88 because they'd read the track pattern by that stage. So I think he had his right conditions that day. Previously, second up from a spell, he's sort of rated down off his fresh run. His first up run this time in was in the Luskin Star, a stakes race. Whenever horses first up get targeted at Warrnambool, Hawkesbury, Scone, any of these standalone meetings,
yes, yeah.
I get worried about backing them next run, Jules, because I feel like it was probably a target for him. He's a very good fresh horse, target. So I'm just saying that price that's currently on offer for him at present, which is $4, I wouldn't take that. I think you'll get closer to 5 on the day.
Beautiful. So there's the 3 horses for us, and they're all don't snap. So just hold off. You can back them. You get a better price closer to the jump, according to us. Pin the tail this week. We focused on the Kingsford Smith Cup last week, and obviously they didn't run that. So we've removed that away from the system because there's been a couple of scratchings, and we thought, well, let's go to the Queensland Oaks, the race that obviously only came out this week. It is with the favourite Filia. Look, I found this race really tricky to really price up with some confidence. I've marked it $4, but I would not be surprised if she started much bigger than that. I just thought she was the progressive horse that maybe the market would want to continue to trend towards. I think the Roses last start didn't rate that well, but the starts prior, and yes, they were in restricted grade, I thought rated sensationally. So I think if they wanted to just grab a number from there, maybe they can keep her anchored to around that $4. So that's what I've done with Filia in an open race, and I know you're bigger.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, Jules, like for those 9 people watching this show, you texted me and said I'm $4 Filia before I'd even properly assessed the race. And in my head, I think I texted back, I'll be bigger than that.
Yeah.
In my head, I was keen to get it to $5.50. That's what I thought when I texted that to you. I didn't even tell you that. But once I read the track report and saw that it was favouring sort of those horses on pace, and knowing that a lot of her rivals are off-pace horses, I thought, well, that's probably going to keep her in the mix a bit more. So I've settled at $4.50. It would have been $5.50 if we had got a run on track last week, but I just think that track pattern probably just works back in her favour a little more.
Absolutely. So $4.50 for Nick Ashman, $4 for me for Filia in the Queensland Oaks. Yes, mate.
I want to ask you something. Yeah. You spoke about the Flemington set, but a lot of people watching this show know that we've been big fans of Soft Love for a while.
Yeah.
She goes around in race 4. She's drawn the right part of the track.
She has.
I didn't think much went right up here in Scone. I thought it was a bit of a forgive run. When I did the form last night for Flemington, I thought probably the query is if you get deep into that soft range, we just don't know what she's like. Did you have any thoughts that you could add to that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because when I first looked at it and I saw her and I saw the gate and I knew how the track was going to play, I was like, this is going to be just the greatest bet of all time. I just can't wait to, get involved in this. And then priced it up. And look, I haven't given her everything. There's just one doubt, and I just don't know what the doubt really is. I just coming back from Sydney, and I know Big Swinger did it last week, and that was fine. But just to be able to have that trip and then come back and then still perform at your peak level, and she went obviously up to Scone off a peak. That race at Scone didn't rate that well, but I think there was excuses for that. She was back on the inside. She drifted in betting. I think that was purely because of the gate. I still trust the numbers that she's done. I just am a little bit wary about the coming back from Sydney and just her getting back into the groove. But I wouldn't be surprised if she blew them away because it does set up really well for her, I think, just on the facts that she has been able to, the numbers that I've got for her. But I thought the race had some depth to it. I just didn't think it was a foregone conclusion, but I'll be definitely cheering for her. It'll be really interesting to see what the market does, and that probably is the best guide. If she can be well supported, then I think the market's going to say, hey, she's going to get back to that number that she did prior to going up to Sydney. But if she drifts again, then they're saying, hey, there's something not 100% right with Soft Love. So market's going to be a really good guide for the punters that are really keeping an eye on Soft Love.
And I think if that market is there, Jules, obviously if the market's not there and she drifts, then I'd forget about whatever she does on Saturday. But if the market's there and the track is soft 7 and she doesn't go well, then I think we've learnt that she's probably not a wet tracker. And then Matty Laurie and the team then probably think to themselves, okay, we've got to target the right races in spring. Caulfield, obviously Flemington dry really well. But also there's the summer months to pick up those listed races, Christmas sprints and all those types of things as well. So there's a little bit to play out here for Soft Love, but I thought she was a real talking point horse to keep an eye on.
No, it's a really good point. It's a really good point because there's no doubt especially here, we've been wrapping her up, me in particular, saying she's got big group figures in her and she can win a big group race. So it's going to be really interesting to see what she does, but I'm just giving we're giving our opinion of what we think, but I won't be backing her at this stage. But I will be cheering for her. Okay, favourite segment of the week. It is Daisy Thomas. Now, it could be anywhere. I know he's got a bit on. He's got footy, but he's also got some pending exciting things. Daisy, where are you and what's the horse you're pushing the people into this week?
Good morning, Jules. Yes, Foxcatcher fans, how good. Well done, thank you. Yes, we are back on the winners list. Neon's for me, but tip of the cap to your good self. Also to Ash and also Hutchie as well. My goodness, did you boys put on an absolute clinic on the weekend? I'm slightly under the pump here because I'm about to just head into the hospital for a baby follow-up. Not for myself, but obviously the wife. So I am keeping it simple this week. We're going to Eagle Farm. Giga Kick is back. He was a touch short first up. I wasn't as put off as you guys. It's still a decent enough run. Second up, and at the $4 quote, I think that's good investing. Also, well done to us for finding, of course, Adelaide and that line. My goodness, was that the easiest watch you've ever had? So Giga Kick is this week's declaration. I'm pretty keen to play in the Swans game as well. I think the Swans at about $1.50 head-to-head. That's nearly giving it away. So declaration is Giga Kick. Great punting from you boys. Pay the people.
Thanks, Daisy. Yes, no, thank you. We need all the encouragement we can get. Good luck with that baby checkup. Hopefully all's okay there. Sure it is. Obviously then go to golf and do whatever else you do and then have fun with the footy, and I'll see you next week. Plays of the day, mate. So we're just about done here. I'll start us off just from the racebook order situation. We spoke about this horse on a tough day. Race 3, number 10, Dream All Day. First up off 140 days, got the apprentice on. I just think it's the most progressive horse in this race with 53 kilos. I love this time of the year with these horses that are progressive, got plenty of upside, down in weight, and then they can actually then progress through their grades. So Dream All Day for me. Hopefully can find a backside and finish all over the top of them. You are race 6, number 9.
Yeah, 69 for all the lovers out there. Captain, it's just terrible to say that with my voice, but Captain Amelia each way. As I said, I think she gets the run on track to suit. I think the drying conditions at Randwick. Look, the big thing for her, we're still on a heavy track on Thursday morning. So the big thing for her is going to be how much this track dries out in the next 48 hours, because she really needs it a soft 5 or drier. If it's 6 or 7 or worse, then her chances do diminish. But I'm happy to put my neck on the line here and say I'm pretty convinced it'll be at least on the better side of a soft 6, if not a 5 or a 4. And I think that makes Captain Amelia a really good bet, around $20.
All right, race 6, number 9. And obviously, I think people need to be looking into the wheelbarrow and the pretzel. I think there's some 2 interesting spots you should be going to in that position as well. Mate, that's well done. I will see you later. I will see you actually in person. No, I won't talk to you Monday.
It's Wednesday.
I won't talk to you Monday because
we've got Hatchie on Monday.
We've got Hatchie's going to go do the review with me, like you helped him out a couple of weeks ago. I'll see you in person. For
next Wednesday.
Our last preview of this season, and then we come back for the Wink Stakes in August. But it will be our last episode, punters, for this series, and the main man is going to be in the studio with me, and that'll be fun. So I'll see you then, pal. Get better. Don't bring that here. I can already sense I'm starting to get sick just from looking at you, so this concerns me.
In the words of the late, great Richie Benno, don't get bitter, get better.
Sounds good to me. See you, pal.
What are you really gambling with?
For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.